Brazilian travelers are looking into checking boxes when it came to like visiting a landmark like the Tour Eiffel or the Statue of Liberty. Having a picture in front of these landmarks was like a status quo, was like a real luxury. In a moment that we are overloaded with information, more and more the traveler wants a curation when it comes to the best decisions.
Hello and welcome to Brazil is Not for Beginners. Today my guest is Mayra Iguchi. She is one of the owners and partners at HIP, a luxury travel brand here in Brazil. Mayra, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for this special invitation. It's my first time recording a podcast 100% in English.
Amazing.
So I might need some help, but thanks again, Isaac. It's a pleasure to be here.
I like to travel. I've lived in a lot of places, as I've talked about on this podcast before, but not usually in a luxury space. So I'm kind of curious about this and how this space works. You've been working in this space for more than 20 years, for a long time. Maybe we can start out with you introducing yourself and talking about your background in travel, and then we can get into HIP and talk about luxury travel in Brazil.
Sure. So I'm, as you said, Mayra Iguchi, partner at HIP. HIP is a representation company. We focus on the premium touristic products, working always with international brands, which are looking to explore their product here in Brazil. So I've been working in the hospitality industry for over 20 years, and I'm very passionate about it. I think this all might have started as a teenager, having the chance to live abroad. So I lived for almost a year in the US and also had the chance to spend some time in Madrid, in Spain.
Okay.
And also having this Japanese background, I think all this mix of culture and experience brought to where I am now.
Yeah, there's usually a seed that gets planted. My travel story was my parents lived in South Africa for a year, and I would hear about this growing up. Supposedly my mom got asked to leave. She was doing things she wasn't supposed to with the apartheid government and was asked to leave. And so, but I would hear about these stories. And so I always heard about going internationally, but you actually went not just from somebody that liked to travel to studying tourism and hospitality. What brought you into that space? What were these trips abroad that you did? Was it just kind of an English exchange, Spanish exchange? What made you go from I like to travel to I want to study and work and travel?
Yeah, so I've always been very passionate about meeting new people, and not only that, I think learning about new cultures. Okay. I was always very curious to see different places and not the so well traditional, maybe cities that Brazilians were looking at. And then when it was a conversation that I had with my dad about, I was a little bit uncertain of college and university because I think the lack of options were so great when it comes like to one possible
stuff to decide when you're 17 that I'm going to do that.
Correct, we're so young.
Life.
But then I think during a conversation, a very enlightening one that I had with my dad, he said, oh, Brazil has such great potential, natural resources, but there is an important lack of infrastructure, also the workforce. Have you ever looked at this maybe way of like having your career built towards tourism in Brazil? I hear there's enormous potential and enormous space to grow. And I thought that was so interesting because I could unite my passion to travel with building a career on that. So I decided to go for it. And I studied tourism at the Universidade de São Paulo, which was really focused to the planning of touristic destinations. Okay. Along the way, I've learned it's a very challenging area because most of the time working for the government, it's sometimes you have the right skills, but you don't have the right contacts. So it was very, very challenging, but it made me understand that was what I wanted to do.
Okay. And your first job was working at an actual, like a posada, so an inn for people that don't speak Portuguese, in a coastal city here between Sao Paulo and Rio. Kind of how did you get into why did you go to that kind of operator side? And what was that experience like? What did you learn being on that operator side, working with the property? Not necessarily, at the front desk, but I think you were doing sales, right?
Yeah, I always did sales. So I always worked off property. At the time, I was working their sales office based in Sao Paulo. And I started as an intern. So I was really exploring the area. But I've made my way up to sales manager, where I had the chance to create their sales department from scratch. And that was an important learning at the time. I was very young. I was only 20 years old. But I think that I built up the skills from that space and learned one fundamentally important thing was that relationships and how you forge and foster these relationships would be key throughout my career. So it was an important learning, although I spent maybe 3 years working for that pousada, which is still I'm very passionate about the destination, Paraty, in Rio de Janeiro. That helped me understand. I think that was a proof also that this is the path I wanted to go.
Okay. Was that focused on, and I know this is a long time ago and things have changed, but I'd be interested in kind of, were you catering to a domestic audience or an international audience, and kind of what did you learn about positioning and thinking about this, right? So you mentioned Brazil has so many beautiful destinations, so many beautiful places, and sometimes we'll go to a place and I'll show somebody photos of this incredible place. Like we went a number of years ago to Itaim Benzinho, the canyons in the south, which are spectacular. But until I went looking for something in that region, I didn't even know they were there. And I show them to Brazilians who've never heard of them, and it's this amazing place. So how do you think about kind of the sales and positioning of a property and a place?
Yeah, so back in the days, this was like you said, long ago, over 20 years ago, but I remember we would put a lot of focus on the international market. And the way of doing this was to get in touch with the local tour operators in Brazil that were aiming at the international traveler. So we would get a lot of like French nationality, England, North Americans. And at that time, Brazilians, although they were traveling within Brazil, I think luxury travel for them meant looking outside, traveling abroad. So I think that's why we were like focusing our efforts to the international market at the time, and building the partnerships with these companies who would go and explore this foreign, traveler. And I think that has evolved now. Like as you mentioned, Brazil has been put in the map as an important and exciting destinations for everyone, including Brazilians right now.
I hope. Brazilians tend to undervalue Brazil in lots of ways. Products and everything. So I want to get into that from a luxury perspective, but you were doing the sales for the international audience, and then you went to HIP, which you've been with now for 20 years. What was it as you were looking at this international audience that attracted you to this idea of luxury travel? Were you seeing that Brazilians were going abroad and needed help? Were you seeing that there was an opportunity to bring luxury to Brazil? What appealed to you at that moment to go from what seemed to be a good job where you were succeeding to joining this relatively new company in this new space?
Yeah, I think it was at the time very challenging, in the sense of we were creating a business model that didn't exist. So HIP, I remember like my first sales calls, I would go to a company, to a travel agent, and spend most of my time explaining how we would make money and not about the product itself. So it was challenging in the sense, but at the same time, it was a huge opportunity to do something creative, new, with no reference, and being very exciting also to see the interest coming from international brands to work in this market, but not knowing how to start. So they would have, sometimes the language would be a barrier for them, the time zone, and also the lack of the right contact. So they didn't know how to start. So building HIP was a way of being this local provider for these international brands who are looking to expand their presence here in Brazil, and that would need someone expert with the relationships in place. Because after my initial phase at the Pousada do Sandy, I managed to learn a bit how the market worked, and also start building my first relationship with the important agents. Okay. And then it helped me a lot when I moved, because I moved to the other side. I was working with the international traveler, and then I started to work with the Brazilian traveler going outside. So I changed sides, but essentially the partners and the travel agents were the luxury ones.
Right. Can you, I know I don't want to give you, recall your nightmares of these early meetings explaining your business model, but can you explain to people that maybe are less familiar, including myself, kind of how this industry works? What is the role of a representation company? Kind of what is the model there that you were building and that you were bringing to Brazil that didn't exist previously?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because up to now, sometimes my mom has challenges understand what I do.
Yeah,
so let me try to explain.
That general problem with anything their kids do.
Yeah, so let me try to explain. But we are the local extension sales arm for the international brands here in Brazil. So our goal is to increase the share of Brazilians in that property or into the destination. And we do this by educating the travel agents and the tour operators about the product. We create business and event opportunities for them to connect. We also work on this curation of hotel selections to match the right fit of clients, because a luxury property might not be a good fit for certain clients. It doesn't work. It's one size fits all. It's not. So we have to understand exactly the needs of the traveler, and together with the travel agents, find this right product. So this is essentially what I do. Right. I create these connections and forge these relationships between the international brands and the travel agents here in Brazil.
Okay. What was it about that time period? And I can think back to kind of my understanding of Brazil. I think it was 2005, 2006, right? That you started?
Correct.
So it was Brazilians were wealthy and going abroad, right? Is that what it was? I think it was less than 2 to 1. Was the FX rate. And so was it just that Brazil was booming, there was disposable income, and you saw this opportunity? Was there more to it? Did you see it as kind of a structural shift? What was it that you kind of were like, okay, this is a growth space that I need to get into?
Yeah, so we saw ourselves in this intersection of this great interest in coming from the international brands with the growing interest in coming from Brazil to visit new places. But at that time, I understand that the Brazilian luxury consumers valued the international trips a lot. They were looking into checking boxes when it came to like visiting a landmark like the Tour Eiffel or the Statue of Liberty. Having a picture in front of these landmarks was like a status quo, was like a real luxury. And at the same time, I saw small properties and not so well-known, maybe hotel chains, wanting to look and to get their share of Brazilians. At the time, they didn't know how to interact with these agents operating here in Brazil. So looking at this intersection of possibilities, we thought, okay, so we can easily guide the brand here and have the Brazilians find also other hotel chains that are other boutique properties in the destination they're aiming for, with a more authentic vibe, because Marriott was a brand that has always been here. Accor is another great and important brand. But what about the boutique properties? What about the small and authentic, more local experience companies offering? How could they explore and have more Brazilians if they don't have the distribution channel so big as the other international brands? So we saw that as an opportunity to speed up this process.
Super interesting. On the one end, kind of how have you seen this change? How did we go from, and I can relate to we need to get a photo in front of the Eiffel Tower check mark from some of the extended family and friends that have come and stayed in my apartment and wherever I was living at the time. But how did we go from I need the check mark to, okay, I don't need to stay in Manhattan. I can stay at a boutique in the Hudson Valley and really get an experience, or go outside of Paris to some smaller city in France, or go to South Africa and go to a boutique safari, right? These types of things. So how did we go from a Brazilian perspective to that? And then on the other side, how do the boutique brands grow themselves? Do they set up in Brazil? How do they get known by the consumer? Because it's easy that I stay at Marriott when I travel. I have points at Marriott. I stay at the Courtyard when I travel for work, but I'm going to use my points to stay at the fancy one when I do a trip with my wife. Or, I'm just kind of using examples here, but can you generally talk about, I think I'm asking about the two sides of the evolution of this kind of appeal to luxury travel in Brazil?
Yeah, so two interesting questions. I'll start from the last one. I think for the boutique properties, it's more challenging putting themselves in the map for the consumer. Mm-hmm. And that's why it is key, the role of the travel agent in the space. Mm-hmm. So they act as really the real influencers when it comes to suggesting a different property. Because usually the traveler might have the name of a big hotel chain, mm-hmm. but when looking into a destination, and if that's of their interest, because we always have also the traveler that would like to stick to the well-known, brand that's already familiar, but we have more and more those adventurous travelers that are looking for something more authentic. And the role, again, of the travel agency in suggesting other not so well-known properties are essential. And I think that's when the surprises might arise, because again, if you go to a brand, like let's say a Four Seasons, you can be in Egypt, you can be in Morocco, you can be in South Africa, or anywhere. You open your eyes when you wake up in the morning, and you have that Four Seasons feeling. But maybe you won't remember where you are at, which country.
You're in Four Seasons.
Because you're at the Four Seasons, essentially. And now, more and more, we see travelers that want to wake up, open their eyes, and feel, oh, I am in India. I am in South Africa. So living that authenticity is I think the role, again, of the travel agent in mm-hmm. meeting these expectations are so key. And that's where the opportunity lies for the boutique property. And the question, again, of the first question is how I think the Brazilian travelers have evolved throughout this year.
To your last point of how did we go from I want to go to the Four Seasons in Paris to I want the authentic Parisian experience?
I think there was a big change more and more after, and it's evolving. It keeps mm-hmm. evolving. But I think the pandemic played an important part in our industry. So we stopped traveling. We were inside of our houses. We had few interaction with different cultures. And I felt that when the world started opening again, not only the Brazilians, affluent travelers, but I think this happened worldwide, they started exploring and valuing other ways of spending their money. Mm-hmm. And I think travel started to play a priority in their investment, options.
Yeah, I think it's a generational thing as well, right?
Correct. And then together with that, living what would be like the authentic lives of the communities and destinations they were visiting came along with that feeling of the world is so bad. We were locked for so many months. Now mm-hmm. I want to go and explore. I think there's more out there that what we've lived up to now. So I think the pandemic was an essential moment to that difference and to that involvement when it comes to the maturity of the traveler.
How big is and this is, I may not be phrasing this question right, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but how big is the Brazilian luxury travel market? Because I think a lot of people think about Brazil as a developing country, a big country, but as a developing country. And so maybe it doesn't have a large share of wallet for luxury travel, but there's obviously a lot of wealth in Brazil. So I guess how big is that market? How many people are we talking about that are interested in kind of luxury travel or international travel that appeals to these types of boutique hotels and more unique experiences?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And I think coincidentally this week I was reading a report that was launched beginning of the year about our numbers. So our latest numbers and records come from regarding 2024.
Okay.
And the numbers were roughly $28 billion in expenditure coming from these Brazilian travelers.
All going outside of Brazil?
All going outside. Okay. And they're aiming, like the forecast by 2030 is that this number will grow to $44 billion.
Yeah, almost doubling.
Yeah, almost. So it's a significant growth. Of course, you cannot compare to North America or maybe England, but it's a significant amount, especially when you consider our middle class, because when there is this shift of, remember, travel being a priority for lots of people, we have this growing middle class with an important purchasing power that makes it very interesting to international brands. And also when we think about something very cultural and very unique to the Brazilians is the possibility to pay installments.
Yeah.
So that creates also and increases our purchasing power, and that becomes sometimes travel that would not be possible otherwise.
Yeah.
They put it as a possibility. So I think all of this, although we are not the greatest or largest number when it comes to the Brazilian luxury consumer, we play a significant part. Also when they're looking to diversify the targets they're working with.
So you mentioned this idea of the Brazilians being able to parcelar and more people seeing travel as a priority purchase. Can you talk a little bit about how Brazilians travel? Like, how would you describe Brazilians as travelers? And maybe we can start broadly and then narrow in on your segment more specifically.
Yeah, so what I've been identifying as maybe I could say a trend is, and especially after the pandemic again, we've seen this multi-generational travel where you see the grandma traveling with their granddaughter and creating these beautiful moments that would not happen otherwise. So I think this is beautifully how Brazilians travel in families, and they take their kids, they take their parents. Also, interesting fact is that Brazilians have started to learn to travel in the low season, which means getting away from the overcrowded destinations. So I think they pay a better price for it, and they have a better experience. And what I also could say about the Brazilians is they're putting Brazil back to the map when it comes as a travel possibility. So I think they're valuing more and more our hotels, our local brands, our experiences. And I think it's been very exciting for me, although I don't work with any Brazilian property, but being a Brazilian and seeing this change, this shift in the Brazilian mentality, I think it's very rewarding.
Very cool. I liked the multi-generational travel. And you mentioned your Japanese background, but I know a number of people who do the Japanese family trip. So they all go to Japan, 3 generations, right? The grandparents, the family, and the kids. And Brazil is a country of immigrants, right? So also going back to Portugal, going to Italy, going to Spain. Are they looking for a luxury type experience? So you mentioned like creating that unique moments. Like how are they doing that? And maybe I'm asking a question now. What can the foreign brands do to appeal to these multi-generational travelers who probably because they're multi-generational maybe also have more disposable income to put towards that experience?
Yeah, this is also an interesting trend that's coming up. I've read about nostalgic travel. So this is going back to the roots. So going back to the country of origin and taking the whole family for that experience is a new thing. I think international brands, when looking at this possibility of receiving people and the same crowd but different ages, it's a space where they can be very creative on how to attract the different ages. So maybe a kids club would be important, and also a spa for the adults. Or if you think the grandma needs to have some support when it comes to the access to the room or help with their luggage. So how they can cater to this different audience, which is essentially the traveler or the luxury traveler, but with different needs in the same, bucket.
Very interesting. The different needs is also something that I can relate to, in that I think I have a friend who does his travel brand in India, actually very focused on elderly and handicapped people, people that need special access and things like that. Are there things that the luxury traveler looks for, specifically the Brazilian luxury traveler? So you mentioned kind of a brand being able to appeal to multi-generations, but are there other things that Brazilians as travelers specifically seek out when they're thinking about, especially something that's more of a luxury type experience?
Yeah, I think at the same time, they're looking for kind of an extension of their home, their houses when they travel. At the same time, they want this authenticity. I think Brazilian travelers are more adventurous now. So instead of maybe organizing a trip to Paris, New York, and London, they can go to a game drive in South Africa. Or they could be looking for a village in the center of Kenya or Tanzania and spending some time with this local community. So I think this traveler and the opportunity with the international brands is, again, being creative on the type of experiences they're building for this new traveler. And the more we can be exclusive, personalized, and authentic, I think the better, because Brazilian consumers, they're also willing to pay extra if they can have access to those exclusivity.
Okay. How does that, and you talked about it a little bit at the beginning, and then again, I want to come back to now kind of Brazil as a travel destination, and how do Brazilians think about that? So I think that the sometimes international traveler is more likely to think about Brazil as an exclusive place. But I'm hearing, I think there's certain places in Brazil that I hear people going to more. So Fernando de Noronha is obviously a place. Bonito being a place that people like to go to. My number one location when my kids are old enough to go is Lençóis de Maranhenses.
Beautiful.
I want to be old enough I want my kids to be old enough that I don't have to carry them.
Yeah, that's it.
Is the idea. But how are Brazilian places getting recognized, and how are Brazilian travelers beginning to appeal to that?
Yeah, I think more and more we've been improving in our infrastructure. I think there's lots of challenges in how to make this work better inside of Brazil, but I think we're doing a great job, and we are being recognized, I think, especially coming from the private sector. So having these hotel chains, and I can name a few like Fazano, Emiliano Hotel, we have Chai, and we have also other boutique properties that are doing a great job participating in international trade shows outside of Brazil and helping put our country in the map. I believe this partnership between the private and public sector when it comes to the Brazilian exposure and promotion is essential in our industry.
What kind of practical guidance can you give as somebody who's now worked in this space for multiple decades for the luxury brands and they're appealing to the consumer? So you said your focus again is foreign brands appealing to customers in Brazil. What is attractive about the Brazilian luxury consumer to them, and what can they do to appeal to the Brazilian consumer? So you mentioned things like personalization, but are there other things that kind of practically speaking, these brands should do? Should it be direct to consumer? You mentioned working through the travel agents. Kind of how should they think about this? And we can drill in further.
I think one important thing is for them to understand that it might take some time. They need to have the patience to really understand our cultural nuances. You gotta build this relationship first before trying to make business.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember once back in the days I was with a South African executive, and it was her first time in Brazil. And we went to our first meeting. And she had a very important role at the company. And I was just like escorting her throughout São Paulo. And now in our first meeting, she gets there. She opens like a notebook with like a fixed questions. And from saying hello to the agent, she starts, so how many room nights do you think you can produce for my hotel? And what can I expect? Like that. So she started right away talking about business. And this is, as we know, it's not the way Brazilians work and perform. You gotta build this relationship first.
Yeah.
And then almost business will come as a consequence. So I think the international brands require patience. They also need to have a deep understanding about our cultural nuances. Mm-hmm. If they can learn the language, and I understand Portuguese is very hard, but I can give like super effective examples coming from my clients. Mm-hmm. There are some, I represent a brand from Egypt.
Okay.
And during the pandemic, they all took Portuguese classes. And that was like a game changer for the company, because I think doing business in Brazil, speaking our own language can be super effective. Because otherwise, of course, there's like the travel agent, they speak English, but I don't think it's the same. So I think...
it's not even speaking it well. It's just showing that you made the effort.
You're making the effort, but actually it's impressive because they really speak a really good Portuguese.
Okay.
They did a good job. So from finance to their guides to their sales team, they all speak Portuguese, and they're performing very well in Brazil. So I think having this patience of building that relationship, understanding our cultural aspects is essential before trying to present their product.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and I think it tracks with what we've discussed in other industries as well in terms of the importance of relationships. And I imagine, especially in a luxury environment, if you are a travel representative or travel agent being in this space, you're being trusted by probably a reasonably wealthy person. You need to have confidence that what you're going to deliver to them is reliable and good quality. How do a lot of the luxury travelers work through agents? I mean, I go to the mall and I go to, you see CVC, right? So it's there, and there's these agents, and there's kind of a lot of these travel agents appealing to the Brazilian middle class and things like that. What is the role of travel agent, travel concierge to more of this luxury class, and how should, again, the luxury brands abroad think about reaching them and going to them? Obviously contracting you, but beyond that.
Yeah, so regarding your question, if the affluent Brazilian travelers use a travel agent, I would say yes.
Okay.
Most of the travel coming from international, looking to the outside and the affluent traveler, the bookings are coming from the travel agents. It's a significant amount. And I think the role they have is in a moment that we are overloaded with information. Mm-hmm. More and more, the traveler wants a curation when it comes to the best decisions, because the information is out there and the information is abundant. So what they really need is that consultant, the travel consultant, with the right amount of information coming from the client, and having this also possibilities of like creating multiple itinerary and multiple different itineraries, him identifying what the needs or the purpose for that trip and matching with the right products. you know? So I think taking the best decisions on behalf of the traveler are key nowadays with this amount of information. And again, back to the relationships, having the right contact at hotels or throughout the chain, the tourism chain, is essential, because there's always something that goes unexpected in travel. And the best thing is, in these occasions, is to have the human support. Like, no one wants to imagine you missed your flight, imagine you lose your luggage, and you having to chat with a chatbot to have that problem solved. So I think, especially coming from the Brazilian affluent traveler, having a travel agent on the other side of the line when something goes unexpectedly is key.
Okay, that makes sense. And I guess this ties into kind of where I wanted to go next, which is, you know, obviously this space is evolving and changing, and we're dealing with lots of information, and it's 2026, and now we have AI.
Yeah.
How is, I know you're interested in kind of tech and innovation, and how is technology changing travel and sales and that relationship? And I'll ask it at a broad level, and then maybe we can dive in on a couple of points.
First of all, I'm a very big enthusiastic about this new technology. And I've always seen, it's not a new thing. I think hospitality and the travel industry has always been keeping track of everything that technology can provide. But I think when we look at this luxury space, tech needs to be happening in the back office, you know? And I think hotels and tourism products like cruises, trains, and all those suppliers, they're doing a great job when it comes to bring the technology to help their process, to help the way things are done in the hospitality side. So imagine those, like a key innovation was the room key, which before used to be really a key and it would be heavy and they would be losing it all the time. Now it's an electronic key and it's very easy. So this is part of the technology. But essentially, in the front of the traveler needs to have to keep the human interaction happening. But I don't think anyone wants to get to a hotel front desk and wait in line because the check-in process is taking forever. So right there, technology can help. And in several areas of, again, the back office, tech needs to stay there. But human interaction front and center.
Okay. And how do you see it factoring into kind of how customers are also searching for stuff, right? So more and more, you know, okay, I'm going to go do a 5-day trip. I mean, I don't know, the wine region of Mendoza. I'm going to go use my chatbot or my AI and say, hey, which wineries should I go to and how do I plan this? And how do you see that, the consumer front end, interacting with your role in presenting some of these properties? And what can these properties do to kind of be a parent and a peer and then integrate technology while keeping that human front-facing piece as well?
Travelers are using AI to have an idea of their itinerary. So, and they can easily put a prompt there and have the information readily available. But I still see the same traveler that's been doing the research with AI reaching out to the travel agent and asking, so I really like this hotel. Do you have any good contacts? Because I really need to prepare the room before arrival. I might need an early check-in, or I'm sending some deliveries and I need them to receive them. So I think this interaction with the travel agent, when it comes to like they have the right contacts at every hotel or every supplier they're interested, is what will make the difference. And they might send to their travel consultant, oh, this is the itinerary that I find ideal for my trip, but I need to be recognized when I get at each hotel. And I'm sure you can do this with the contacts you have at each property. Okay. So it's a mix. You know,
interesting.
Yeah.
How do you see it going forward? So we're in this transitional stage right now as well.
Totally.
People are figuring it out. So what is it that you see kind of going forward? What are maybe some trends that you're excited about, and what does it mean for kind of this affluent luxury space?
I see a lot of excitement. I see AI as a good partner for us. I think it can speed up the creation of an itinerary. It can speed up like content creation as well. When it comes to like organizing inspirations to the travelers. And I think by doing this, by speeding up sometimes the process and the bureaucratic steps related to travel, this will leave time and space for the travel agents be exploring more and more the relationships. So they will have more time to get together with the suppliers, for example, and build that relationship. They will have also more time to receive their clients and their guests and talk about their needs, their purpose. So I think this will be the AI and all this technology that's coming up will make the personalization even more possible. No, we talk a lot about the hyper personalization now that's going to be possible, and while we build like the storytelling behind how we build the human interaction.
One of the things I always worry about with some of these technology things, and this is maybe a conversation for another day, is kind of regression to the mean at the same time that you see personalization, right? So like it gives you options, but then forces you down a certain path. I guess my question is, are you seeing more people trying more new things, right? So ideally what you're getting, and you mentioned some really good examples there of this Egyptian partner that's doing very well here. And we talked about South Africa, we talked about India, we talked about some of these places that I think it used to be that Brazilian travelers wanted to go to Paris and they wanted to go to New York and they wanted to go to Miami. And now you're seeing hopefully more places. Are you seeing that movement towards more people going to more unique places, or is it still a little bit of more places, it gets discovered, everybody goes to that place?
Yeah, I think there are places that we say it's hyped, and some travelers that will look for that hype. They want to be where everyone else is. But I also see this trend of the adventurous traveler looking for less crowded destinations, more remote. So we start sometimes back in the days, maybe the accessibility of a destination would be key for a traveler. So, and now I'm starting to listen that the remote places is the place where I want to be. I want to take 3 to 4 flights to arrive at that destination, because this is the privacy. This is the uniqueness. Probably few people have been there because it's challenging to arrive. So I think there is also this shift where, and sometimes we're talking about the same traveler. You see, the same traveler want to do a remote trip, and later in the year, they will look to be in a popular destination where everyone is.
I want a very easy flight with my kids, and I'm willing to do something more complicated when I don't have to deal with making them get on each flight.
So I'm the same. So when I travel with my kids, I want the convenience. I want what's easy. But maybe when I am traveling as like a solo travelers are also have been increasing. If I'm a solo traveler, maybe I will look for that remote destination and something that would not be possible with my kids. So I am the same traveler, but with different purpose, depending on the trip I take.
Okay, very interesting. And you've been, changing gears just a little bit here. You've been with HIP for 20 years plus. You're not the original founder, but have helped build the business quite a bit. Our friend, our mascot is here.
We have company.
Yes, we have company. But you're not the original founder, but you've helped build it over the last 20 years. And so what can you share about what some of the lessons are that you've had in building this, in particular, kind of navigating the international and Brazilian intersection, right? So in some respects, you're that translator working between the brands. And you mentioned, learning the language. You mentioned the client who didn't understand the need to build rapport kind of dove right in. I think anybody that's been in Brazil has had that experience of somebody that didn't know that you take the first 10 minutes of the meeting to ask about the football match or whatever is going on the weekend. But what are some of the lessons that you can look back on and say, okay, these were some of the important things I learned that you'd pass on to other people kind of building small businesses?
I think when it comes to my business model, I think the curation of a good portfolio of clients is important, because we need to understand what are the companies that are really committed to our market and share the same long vision, with us. Because sometimes the path might take some time. Brazilians, we need to gain their trust, before they actually start seeing you as a possibility. So I think working this curation was essential. We had to say no many times to brands who would not be willing to spend the time getting to know how we work or wanting to adapt to our nuances. And the other thing I've learned is building this long-term relationship with my clients, rather than focusing on the quick wins.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
How do you, so I relate to a lot of those points. I think they're really, really great. How do you think about kind of making those decisions? What is it that you look for? So you said kind of saying no to things, or saying no to brands that don't seem like they're committed. How do you look for that type of commitment? How do you begin to assess who's going to be a viable partner, who's in it to build a relationship versus who's in it for something more transactional? What are some of the things that you look for when you're in those initial meetings and beginning to explore a relationship?
It can be very challenging at the beginning, but at some point you get this feeling of he's not so sure about our market. Because you can tell the difference about a brand who's coming and which is really excited to come to Brazil to explore this market. They're not in a rush. They have the investment to make, other than the ones that are just asking, but how long do you think I'll have my return on investment? So questions like this brings me like a red flag around the commitment he wants to make, because I don't make promise I will not be able to, perform. So I would rather bring out the reality than getting a client and staying for just like a year, because we have all this onboarding process. We have to learn about the product and the unique selling points, and then we have to introduce it to the market. So it takes some time. And I never make like quick promises. And I think when I look at my portfolio of clients, the most successful ones have been on the road with me for like over 15 years. And so there's got to be consistency. If you want to perform well in the Brazilian market, that requires patience, like I mentioned before, and consistency. But once you have this investment in place, when you have the patience, and you're really interested in our markets, I think you can be very successful here.
You've mentioned a few times this idea of consistency, investment in the market. Are there any examples that you can point to of either a brand or a destination that's done a really good job of building a kind of mental space in the Brazilian luxury market that has done that? And kind of what have they done well that allowed them to build that recognition and that perception from the Brazilian audience?
I can name two brands that I work for and have been doing an excellent job. So one is Sabi Sabi.
Okay.
They are game lodge in South Africa.
Okay.
And they've been investing in Brazil for close to 20 years.
Okay.
And they come every year to our markets. They participate in our roadshows and our events. They're not constantly changing their salesperson, because I think this is also something that's very important. Once this industry is made it's all about relationship. When you have like there's the salesperson coming to Brazil and it's like every year a different person, you don't build that connection. And we've been working with the same person for many, many years. So today I can proudly say that Brazilians are top 3 market. And we compete with like Germany, with like, we're only the 3rd market behind North America and England. And that says I think, a lot about the joint partnership we've been doing together here. And the other brand I would say it's a good example is Viceroy Snowmass.
Okay.
So it's a ski destination, it's a seasonal hotel. Brazilians, we don't have a ski destination within the country, so we would assume, I think ski is not activity that will attract.
Because it's sexy, right?
Yeah, that will attract Brazilians, but actually, again, we are also top 5 in the market. We represent a lot, and when it comes to the number of nights that Brazilians stay in that property, it's like the average has been like 7 nights. So we stay long at that property. So we are performing very well. And again, they come every year, they're present, the sales director has been at the property for over 20 years. They've been investing in the market for long. So I think these are 2 great examples where we succeeded. We are significant markets for them.
Amazing. Very cool. Those are helpful. I was looking for some of the practical advice for the companies that might be interested. But this has been great. I really appreciate the time and learning more about this space that I don't know very much about. When I wrap up these conversations, I always like to ask 2 questions. So the first one is, the name of the podcast is Brazil is Not for Beginners. You work with a lot of companies that come to Brazil. Yeah. So what does that expression mean to you?
Again, and I might be repetitive here, but I still, again, I think this requires patience. So the selection also of a good partner really helps you understand the cultural aspects of our country. And at the same time, for those who have those patience, I think they can be beautifully rewarded with our loyalty. I find Brazilian clients very loyal to brands when they feel that this brand care for them. Okay. So I think Brazil is not for beginners, because I think it might take some time to really understand how to penetrate here, how to make friends, and how to fall in love with our country in the sense of, I'm here to stay, I'm here for good, and it might require some time, but I'm committed to this market. So I think that's what I think when I read the name of your podcast.
Excellent. And I also always like to ask, and I'm sure you'll have some good ones, like what is a Brazilian expression or habit or something that catches people off guard? And, one of the examples I've had recently is like here you see somebody, even if they're just like a business acquaintance, a woman, you kind of kiss her on the cheek. And, I go back to the US for work and I do it there accidentally, right? So like, what are some of the things that you see that people, when you're bringing your clients here to Brazil, they're like, why are people doing that? Or they find awkward, or that you have to explain to them?
I think how much Brazilians are connected online. Okay. And so we post everything on Instagram. Everything. So every meeting, we have to finish and with a selfie. Yeah. And then we're going to be posting in our networks. And sometimes my clients say, oh, Brazilians want to post everything. I need to have my Instagram ready to repost it. And yes. So before coming to Brazil and looking to make business, have your Instagram ready, because we're going to tag you.
Excellent. Excellent. This was great. Thank you so much. How can people learn more about HIP or connect with you? I guess both travelers as well as hotels and travel brands.
So I would give my Instagram, or HIP Instagram, which is HIP Hotels. There we mostly talk to the travel trade, but it's also serve as a good inspiration for your next trip.
Excellent. Mayra, thank you so much.
Thank you, Isaac, again. It was very fun to explain about my work and my passion. And hopefully we inspire some of your audience to enter into their next trip.
Yes, and to come appeal to the Brazilian traveler, right? There's a big market here.
Correct.
And a lot of business to be done with you. So thank you again for coming on, and thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you.